The Russia collusion probe is now under attack from the president's transition team lawyers who accuse special counsel Robert Mueller of obtaining their emails illegally.
Now, Mueller's team defended itself this morning, saying everything they got through cooperation or proper legal channels. But members of the GOP and the conservative media are really backing the president here, going against Mueller and his team.
And now doubling down, the Fox News host who said earlier this month that members of the FBI should be, quote, taken out in handcuffs.
Yeah, she now says the Bureau is a crime family trying to take down the president. Joining us now to talk about this, Brian Stelter, CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources. Brian, the rhetoric here is really ratcheting up and happening quickly. There's been a march here, but in the last probably 5 or 6 days, it's really hit a peak.
I agree with you, and you can't understand fully how the Mueller probe is being perceived, how the public is understanding it, without understanding how conservative media is trying to discredit Mueller and discredit the FBI and discredit the DOJ. There is this concerted effort from pro-Trump hosts on Fox News, from radio hosts like Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin, and from some right-wing bloggers and commentators and social media stars to tear down Mueller, to demand his firing, and as you said, in some cases even demand his arrest. It is like watching an alternate universe. And you mentioned Jeanine Pirro, the woman who called for them to be let out in handcuffs this time last week. Let's take a look at what she's saying this weekend. Here's how she is framing this for her audience, which includes President Trump.
I doubt in American presidential election history that there has been as great a crime or as large a stain on our democracy than that committed by a criminal cabal in our FBI and the Department of Justice who think they know better than we who our president should be.
Pirro is an informal advisor to President Trump. She was said to be in consideration for a job in the Trump administration. And we know that President Trump loves to watch her show and other very supportive shows on Fox News. So consider the effect of this kind of rhetoric on a daily basis, every single day being heard by the president and his aides. That's one of the reasons why there's such a growing concern that Trump may try to fire Mueller. It's because he's being advised to do so by his favorite hosts on TV.
Right, but there are an awful lot of people who will seriously question that firing, one, if it happens.
Right.
And I mean, Brian, when we talk about who President Trump is talking to, let's face it, President Trump is talking to Fox himself.
And listening to them.
Right, exactly. And look, he also watches other cable news channels, including this one, so he does hear a wide range of opinion. But I am really struck by the language, the rhetoric, the, in some cases, propagandistic framing that we're seeing from hosts like Sean Hannity. Banners on screen that say, "A coup in America, question mark? Is it time to investigate the investigators, question mark?" Hannity calls Mueller the head of the snake, says he's disgraceful. So this kind of language, repeated over and over again, I think of it as a feedback loop. I was talking to another expert about this, Nicole Hemmer, who wrote a book about right-wing media. She said there's a feedback loop between these commentators who know what the president wants to hear, and then the president says similar comments, which then reinforces and emboldens these pro-Trump hosts. It's definitely something to pay attention to as we hear this drumbeat about Mueller, because we know polls show the majority of the public is very supportive of the Mueller probe. They want to know what really happened with Russia's meddling in the election last year. But there is a vocal minority of the country that is fed by hosts like Hannity, who are incredibly skeptical of Mueller. It's a real example of the divide in the country and how conservative media is fueling that divide right now.
Yeah, Brian, it's also important to point out that the president is not alone. We heard in the testimony, at least the questioning by some of the House members when the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, was on the Hill this week, quoting some of these reports, some of these Fox hosts and their stories about Mueller and his probe.
And it's one thing to wonder about certain members of the Mueller team. Look, there are members of the Mueller team that gave donations to Democrats. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that they are so biased that they're incapable of being involved. But it's fair to ask those questions, and reporters from CNN and Fox and lots of outlets have asked those questions. I think it's another thing for Jeanine Pirro to talk about a criminal conspiracy, for Sean Hannity to say this is entirely corrupt. right? It's a big leap to go from legitimate questions about the credibility, and those should be asked, and so far the public supports the probe, versus the kind of propagandistic day-to-day drumbeat that we're hearing from these Fox News hosts. And I think it's important to see this is what's being told to people like President Trump on a daily basis.